In the hushed classroom, the air was heavy with the quiet sounds of pencils scratching on paper. The clock ticked steadily, counting down the final moments of the history test. Princess Charlotte sat poised at her desk, her eyes fixed on the sheet before her. One question stood out. In which year did World War I begin? This was the last test before the nationwide junior essay competition, an event she had competed in every year since she learned to read and write. Around her, other students were engrossed in their work. Some breezed through the questions, while others paused, chewing on pens in forced concentration. For most, it was just another test, another routine challenge of school life. But for Charlotte, it carried extra weight. She knew her performance would be scrutinized more than anyone else's. Mediocrity was not an option for royalty. As her eyes scanned the multiple-choice answers, her hand tightened around her pencil. The options were neatly listed, but the first one was glaringly incorrect. The year was several years off. Her heart skipped a beat as she reviewed the other choices. They all had the same mistake. Charlotte bit her lip, her mind racing. She knew the correct answer, of course. She also knew the consequences of letting an error like this go unnoticed. She shifted in her seat, glancing around. James Fitzgerald sat a few rows away, scribbling furiously, seemingly unaware of the error. Should she say something? Speaking up would draw attention to her, and the weight of her royal title pressed heavily on her shoulders. Being royalty meant always being perfect. Her hand trembled slightly as she lowered her pencil and raised her hand. "Yes, Charlotte?" Mr. Thompson, the teacher, looked up from his notes, his expression a mix of curiosity and mild amusement. "Sir, I believe there's an error on the test," Charlotte said, striving to keep her voice steady. "The years for World War I are incorrect." A hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to Charlotte. Her classmates exchanged glances, some frozen in their seats. James raised an eyebrow, visibly irritated. Mr. Thompson's face shifted from amusement to a subtle frown. "Are you sure, Charlotte? Perhaps you're mistaken. We can review it later." Charlotte's resolve hardened. "No, sir, I'm certain. The year is wrong." The tension in the room was palpable. Whispers broke out among the students. James muttered under his breath. "Smarty pants strikes again. Thinks she knows everything." Ellie Parker, Charlotte's friend, shot back. "And what if she's right, James? That could mean other questions are wrong, too." "Enough!" Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the murmurs. He looked back at Charlotte, his tone uncertain. "We'll check it after class. Please, continue with your test." But Charlotte wasn't ready to let it go. "The correct year is 1914, sir, not 1913 or any of the other years listed." Mr. Thompson regarded her for a moment before sighing. "Very well, everyone, finish your tests. We'll review the matter later." The murmurs subsided, but the room felt charged. Charlotte returned to her test, her focus scattered. When the bell finally rang, she gathered her things, avoiding the lingering stares of her classmates. James didn't speak, but his pointed look as he left said enough. Outside, the sunlight bathed the courtyard, but Charlotte felt none of its warmth. She found a secluded bench and sat down, replaying the scene in her mind. Had she done the right thing? Mr. Thompson's reaction gave her little reassurance. She had felt confident at the moment, but doubt was beginning to creep in. What if this caused trouble? What if her parents were disappointed? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Ellie walked over and sat beside Charlotte, her gaze soft and understanding. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle but laced with concern. Charlotte sighed, leaning back against the bench. "I don't know, Ellie. I'm not sure I should have said anything. What if they think I'm trying to make a scene? Or that I'm just showing off?" She looked over at Ellie, her eyes searching for reassurance. Ellie gave her a warm, reassuring smile, the kind that always chased away Charlotte's doubts. Ellie was a bright and spirited young woman, beautiful and full of charm. Unlike Charlotte, Ellie hadn't grown up surrounded by privilege, but that never mattered to their friendship. Ellie had known Charlotte for years and admired her for her intelligence and kindness. To Ellie, Charlotte wasn't just a princess, she was a person trying to find her place in the world. Ellie had often been Charlotte's anchor, offering comfort, acceptance, and a friendship free of judgment. She also served as an escape from the pressures of royal life and as an excellent study partner. Together they aced their classes and won competitions, forming a dynamic duo that was the envy of rival schools. "You did the right thing, Charlotte," Ellie said, her voice steady. "The test was wrong, and you corrected it. It's not about being perfect, it's about being honest." Her words were simple but profound, and Charlotte clung to them. "But what about everyone else?" Charlotte asked, her voice tinged with worry. "What if they don't think it's about honesty? What if they think I'm just trying to show off?" Ellie shrugged lightly, her tone serious but supportive. "Who cares? You did what was right. If they can't see that, that's their problem." She nudged Charlotte playfully. "And you know what? I think they respect you for it. Not everyone has the courage to call out a mistake, especially to a teacher." Charlotte exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Ellie's words, as always, made her feel lighter. Maybe Ellie was right. This wasn't about looking good. It was about doing the right thing, even if not everyone understood. The bell rang, signaling the end of their break. As they stood to return to class, Charlotte felt a renewed sense of determination. She couldn't change what had already happened, but she could walk forward with her head held high. When they arrived for their history lesson, the atmosphere was different. Mr. Thompson had gone to the headmaster to discuss the error Charlotte had pointed out. As the class settled in, the headmaster himself walked in. He was a tall man with a stern face, but his gaze softened with respect as it landed on Charlotte. "Class," he began, his voice calm but authoritative. "I'd like to address an oversight in today's test. Princess Charlotte identified an error in the dates for World War I, and she was correct. I commend her for her attention to detail and her courage to speak up." The room fell silent. Charlotte felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she didn't look down. This moment wasn't about seeking validation, it was about standing up for what was right. Then, softly at first, clapping began from the back of the room. The applause grew louder as more students joined in, until the entire class was on their feet, clapping and cheering for her. It wasn't just the correction they were applauding, it was the bravery it took to speak out, to challenge authority when necessary. Charlotte stood there, caught between pride and surprise. This wasn't the reaction she had expected. She had braced herself for reprimands or ridicule, but instead she was receiving respect. As the applause faded, Charlotte felt a smile spread across her face. The weight of her earlier doubts lifted. She had done the right thing, and that was all that mattered. The school day came to an end, and as Charlotte walked out of the building with Ellie by her side, she felt lighter. The storm of uncertainty had passed, leaving behind a calm resolve. Later that evening, back at Kensington Palace, Charlotte sat by her window, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the city. Her parents entered her room, their expressions warm. "Well done, Charlotte," her mother, Kate, said with pride. "You did the right thing," her father, Prince William, added, his voice brimming with approval. "Of course I knew," William said with a playful smile. "I hear everything about my little eaglet." Charlotte smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. It wasn't about the applause or the recognition, it was about knowing she had stood up for something important. For the first time, she felt her role as a princess meant more than just wearing a crown. It meant standing for truth and challenging norms, even when it wasn't easy. In the days that followed, Charlotte threw herself into preparing for the junior essay competition. Inspired by recent events, she decided to write about how teachers' mistakes could affect students and the importance of mutual understanding in education. As she worked in the library with Ellie, she paused to share her thoughts. "Do you think my essay title is too long?" she asked. Ellie smiled knowingly. "Creativity isn't about right or wrong, long or short. If it feels right, then it is." Charlotte laughed softly, feeling grateful once again for her wise and supportive friend. Together they continued their work, and Charlotte realized something profound. True leadership wasn't about perfection. It was about courage, integrity, and staying true to one's values. What do you think about Charlotte's decision to speak up? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire bravery and integrity.